I'm not dead. Please, I'm not dead.
Have you ever wondered what happens in the last seconds before death? Does the soul truly leave the body immediately? Or does it linger for a few moments, observing everything around it? What if the dead could see your deepest secrets, the ones you've never told anyone? What if inside a speeding ambulance, between life and death, the veil between the two worlds became so thin that you could see and hear those who have already departed? What would you do if you discovered you weren't alone in that ambulance? That there were invisible eyes watching your every move? That there were voices whispering truths you've tried to bury? This is the true story of Jake and Emily, two paramedics who, on an ordinary night on duty, experienced the most terrifying event of their lives. A story that will make you question everything you know about life, death, and what lies in between. Get ready, because after this story, you'll never look at an ambulance the same way again. The night of October 13th began like any other at the Chicago EMS station. Jake Miller, 34, was in his 10th year as a paramedic. His premature gray hair betrayed the sleepless nights and stress of a profession that dealt daily with the fine line between life and death. He was drinking his third coffee of the night when Emily Parker, 28, his work partner of 3 years, walked into the break room. "Quiet today, huh?" Emily said, tying her long blonde hair into a ponytail. "Don't say that, Em," Jake replied with a tired smile. "You'll bring bad luck." "I don't believe in that stuff," she laughed, but there was something in her tone that suggested otherwise. Jake and Emily made an effective duo. He was more experienced and pragmatic. She was younger and more empathetic. Together, they had saved countless lives, but they had also witnessed deaths, many of them, and each death left an invisible mark, a weight they carried silently. What they didn't know was that that night would be different, very different. It was 11:47 p.m. when the call came. "Unit 23, we have a 1050 on Michigan Avenue near the Magnificent Mile. Male victim, approximately 70 years old, unconscious. Witnesses report heavy bleeding. Code 3. Jake and Emily ran to the ambulance. The engine roared, sirens began to echo through the Chicago night, and they sped off. "Run over on Michigan Avenue," Jake muttered, maneuvering between cars. "Probably some tourist who didn't look before crossing. Or some drunk driver," Emily added, already getting her equipment ready. None of them could have imagined that this was no ordinary call. They arrived at the scene within 8 minutes. The scene was chaotic. Parked cars, people crowded together, cell phone flashes capturing the horror. A black SUV sat in the middle of the road, its windshield cracked like a spider web. On the ground, illuminated by the headlights and streetlights, lay the body of an elderly man. Jake and Emily quickly descended. Training took over. They checked his vital signs: weak pulse, irregular breathing, bleeding from the head. "Sir, can you hear me?" Emily asked, as Jake steadied the victim's neck. "What's your name?" There was no answer. The old man's eyes were half closed, fixed on some distant point. "Let's take him now," Jake decided. "He doesn't have much time." They worked with precision and speed, placing the man on the stretcher and immobilizing any possible fractures. A Chicago police officer approached. "Did you get an ID on him?" "Wallet in pocket," Emily replied, quickly checking. "Mr. Alfred Morrison, age 73. Address here in Lincoln Park." "The driver fled," the police officer reported. "But we'll find him." Jake and Emily didn't have time for police matters. Every second counted. They loaded Mr. Alfred into the ambulance and headed for Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the nearest hospital. Jake drove while Emily stayed in the back, monitoring the patient's vitals, administering IV fluids, trying to stabilize him. "BP dropping," she announced over the internal radio. "Heart rate irregular." "ETA?" she asked, the tension evident in her voice. 6 minutes, Jake replied, pressing the accelerator even harder. But they didn't have 6 minutes. At 11:58 p.m., as the ambulance sped through the Chicago night, Mr. Alfred Morrison breathed his last. Emily saw the exact moment. The old man's eyes, which had been half-lidded, suddenly widened. He looked directly at her, an intense, piercing gaze, as if he wanted to say something. Then, his mouth opened slightly, and he stopped. The monitor beeped. "Straight line." "Jake, "He's not breathing," Emily said, her voice shaking. "No pulse." She immediately began CPR, counting out loud as she compressed Mr. Alfred's chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. But deep down she knew. She had seen too much death. She knew that look. Mr. Alfred Morrison was gone, and it was exactly at that moment that everything changed. First was the cold, an unnatural cold that had no explanation. Emily stopped CPR for a second, confused. The ambulance's air conditioning wasn't on, but the temperature had plummeted. She could see her own breath steaming. "Jake, are you feeling this?" she called. "What? This cold?" Focus on the massage," Jake ordered. But then he felt it too. A shiver ran down his spine. "What the hell?" Emily resumed compressions. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The air inside the ambulance felt heavy, as if someone else were there. And then she heard a voice, hoarse, aged, but clear as crystal. "You can stop now, honey. It's too late." Emily froze, her hands stilled on Mr. Alfred's chest. She looked at his face. His eyes were closed, his mouth motionless. He was dead, but the voice had been so real. What's wrong?" Jake asked, concerned by her silence. Emily glanced around the ambulance. The fluorescent lights flickered. "Did you hear that?" "Twice," she whispered. The medical equipment looked distorted in the dancing shadows. "A voice," she said, barely able to believe her own words. "I heard a voice. You're tired. It's been almost 3 days on duty straight." "I heard a voice," she exclaimed, louder than she intended. Jake slowed slightly, worried. He knew Emily. She wasn't one to freak out. If she said she heard something, "What kind of voice?" he asked, more serious now. Before Emily could respond, it happened. On the bench next to her, where there had been no one seconds ago, now sat Mr. Alfred Morrison, not his body, that remained lying on the gurney in front of Emily, but his form, translucent, faintly shimmering, as if made of silver mist. He watched her with gentle eyes, a faint smile on his face. "Don't be afraid," said the spirit. "I only need a few minutes," Emily screamed. The sound was so sudden and sharp that Jake lost control of the ambulance for a second, causing it to swerve violently. He managed to correct himself, but his heart raced. What is it?" "He's here," Emily shouted, pointing to the bench. "He's sitting right here." "Who?" "The old man. Mr. Alfred, I see him." Jake glanced in the rearview mirror, trying to see the back of the ambulance. All he saw was Emily, pale and shaking, pointing at the empty seat next to her. There's no one there. You're having a..." "She's not having anything, son," Mr. Alfred's voice interrupted, and this time, Jake heard it too. The paramedic instinctively slammed on the brakes. The ambulance lurched to a stop in the middle of Lakeshore Drive, causing the cars behind them to honk furiously. Did you hear that?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I heard," Emily confirmed, tears starting to stream down her face. In the driver's seat, Jake felt the same cold Emily had experienced. And then, in the passenger seat next to him, he saw it. The same translucent shape, the same silvery sheen. Mr. Alfred Morrison sat beside her, his seatbelt buckled, his hands resting calmly in his lap. "Good," the spirit said, looking from one to the other. "And now that I have both of your attention, we can talk." Jake couldn't take his eyes off the figure beside him. Every fiber of his being screamed that this was impossible, that ghosts didn't exist, that he was hallucinating from exhaustion. But the presence was undeniable, too real to be imagination. What do you want?" Jake managed to ask, his voice shaking. Mr. Alfred sighed, a sound that seemed to echo from far away. "Relax, son. I didn't come to hurt anyone. In fact, I came to help." "Help," Emily repeated, still pressed against the ambulance wall, as far away as possible from the bench where the apparition had been. "How can a ghost help us?" "Ghost, spirit, soul, call it what you will," Mr. Alfred said with a sad smile. "All I know is that when my heart stopped back there, something strange happened. Instead of going where I was supposed to go, I stayed. I was left with a clarity I'd never had in my life. And do you know what I saw?" None of them responded. "I saw you both," he continued, his expression more precise now. Not just your faces or bodies. I saw your souls, your stories, your secrets. That's not possible, Jake muttered. Jake Miller, the spirit said, turning fully to the driver. 34 years old, divorced for 2 years. A 7-year-old daughter named Emma who you haven't seen in 4 months. Jake's blood froze. Like you. Not because you don't want to, Mr. Alfred continued, relentless but gentle, but because you're ashamed. Ashamed that she sees what you've become. The sleeping pills you take. The bottle of whiskey hidden in your apartment closet. The real reason your marriage ended. Stop, Jake yelled, tears already welling up in his eyes. Please, stop. Emily looked from one to the other in shock. She hadn't known any of this about Jake. I'm not saying this to hurt you, son, Mr. Alfred said softly. I'm saying it because you both need to hear it. You save lives every day, but you're forgetting to save your own. Then he turned to Emily, and she instinctively recoiled even further. Emily Parker, the spirit said, 28 years old. Everyone thinks you're strong, resilient, brave, but at night, alone in your apartment, you cry. You cry for your sister. Emily's face went completely pale. Rachel was 23 when she died, wasn't she? 5 years ago. Overdose. And you still blame yourself. You still think if you had seen the signs, if you had been a better sister, she would be alive. No, Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Don't talk about her. And that's why you became a paramedic, isn't it? Mr. Alfred continued. Not just to help others, but to punish yourself. Every life you fail to save is like losing your sister all over again. Every death you witness reopens that wound. Emily broke down in sobs, burying her face in her hands. Why are you doing this? Jake asked, furious and scared at the same time. Why are you tormenting us? Because you need to hear it, the spirit replied. Because death gave me a temporary gift, the ability to see the truth. And the truth is that you two are destroying yourselves. You are carrying burdens you don't need to carry. The ambulance was silent except for Emily's sobs. Cars continued to pass by, honking. But inside the vehicle, time seemed to stand still. Mr. Alfred, Jake said, wiping away his own tears. If you can see all this, can you tell me? Can I be a better father? Can I fix this? The spirit smiled warmly. Of course you can, son. But first you need to forgive yourself. You need to understand that being human means failing sometimes. It means having weaknesses. That doesn't make you unworthy of your daughter's love. Then he looked at Emily. And you, my dear. Rachel made her own choices. Choices you couldn't have avoided. Carrying that guilt doesn't honor her memory. You know what would? Living fully. Being happy. Allowing yourself to love again. How do you know about... Emily began, but stopped. About Daniel, the nurse at the hospital who's been interested in you for months, but you always turn her down because you don't think you deserve to be happy. Emily just nodded, speechless. You deserve it, darling. You deserve all the happiness in the world. For a moment, there was a comforting silence in the ambulance. Despite the terror of the situation, despite the impossibility of it all, there was something healing in those words. But then the temperature dropped even further. The ambulance's lights flashed violently, and Mr. Alfred looked back at the back of the ambulance with a worried expression. Oh no, he whispered. It wasn't just you I woke up. What do you mean? Jake asked, but he could already feel the terror setting in again. Death, when it happens in a place like this, where so many lives have passed, where so many souls have departed, sometimes it opens doors that should remain closed. Emily looked back into the dark back of the ambulance, and then she saw them. More shapes, more spirits, and these didn't seem as kind as Mr. Alfred. There were 5 of them, maybe 6. It was hard to count because they moved, blending into the shadows, appearing and disappearing. Some of the shapes were human, others, not quite. Jake, Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Drive now. But Jake was frozen, staring in the rearview mirror. He could see them now too, pale faces emerging from the darkness, spectral hands reaching out. They're the others, Mr. Alfred said, his voice thick with urgency. The ones who died in this ambulance before, or who died on the way to the hospital. Lost, confused souls, some of them angry. Angry? Jake managed to ask. To die in an ambulance is to die between worlds, the spirit explained. Not fully in life, not fully in death. Some of us accept it and move on. Others remain stuck in the place where they took their last breath. One of the figures, a young woman with blood dripping from an invisible wound in her chest, advanced toward Emily. "Why did he get through?" the woman asked, her voice sounding like broken glass. "Why can he get through, but I can't?" "I don't know," Emily screamed. "I don't know anything about this." "Drive! Jake!" she ordered. Jake finally snapped out of his trance and stepped on the gas. The ambulance sped forward, causing other drivers to swerve in alarm. But the spirits were not left behind. One of them, an elderly man with terrible burns covering half his face, appeared in the passenger seat, pushing Mr. Alfred aside. "You have to take me back," the burned man begged Jake. "I have to go back to that day. I have to save my wife from the fire. You have to take me." "I can't," Jake yelled, turning the steering wheel sharply to avoid a car. "I can't do that." Behind, more spirits crowded around Emily. Voices overlapped, all speaking at once. "My daughter needs to know that I loved her. It wasn't my fault. The brakes failed. He pushed me. He pushed me down the stairs. I can't find the light. Where is the light? There's so much pain. Why do I still feel pain?" Emily covered her ears, screaming to drown out the voices. Tears streamed down her face. It was too much. Too much information. Too much emotion. Too much pain. "Get out! Leave us alone!" she screamed, but they didn't stop. They kept coming closer, reaching out, touching. And each touch was like ice burning her skin. "Alfred!" Jake shouted desperately. "Do something!" Mr. Alfred's spirit rose, or levitated, it was hard to tell. He stretched out his arms, and a soft, silvery light emanated from him. "Stop!" His voice echoed with an authority it hadn't had before. "You're scaring these people. They can't help us. They're from the living. We're from the dead." "But you're talking to them," protested the woman with the chest wound. "If you can do it, why can't we?" "Because I've only just arrived," Mr. Alfred said patiently. "My connection to the living world is still strong. You left a long time ago. Your stories have been told. It's time to let go." "No," another spirit volunteer, a teenager with needle marks on his arms. "I don't want to go where they want to send me. I know what I did in life. I know where souls like mine go. No one is going to send you anywhere," Mr. Alfred said gently. "The judgment you fear exists only in your mind. But as long as you refuse to move on, you will remain trapped here, in pain, in confusion." "How do you know so much?" Jake asked, still speeding, dodging Chicago's night traffic. "I don't know," Mr. Alfred said. "When I died, that knowledge was just there, like someone had downloaded the information directly into my consciousness. Maybe everyone does. Maybe I'm special for some reason. I really don't know." The ambulance made a sharp turn onto the hospital street. The lights of Northwestern Memorial were now visible in the distance. "We're almost there," Jake announced. And it was at that moment that something even stranger happened. Mr. Alfred's body, the physical, lifeless body lying on the stretcher, began to glow. It wasn't a bright or obvious glow. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a faint luminescence emanating from his chest, from where his heart had stopped. What's going on?" Emily asked, wiping away her tears and cautiously approaching the body. Mr. Alfred, the spirit, looked at his own body with an expression of confusion and hope. I don't know," he said, "but I feel something. A tug, like something is pulling me back." "Back?" Jake repeated. "Back to where?" "There." The spirit pointed to his own body. "Back to my life." The other spirits, who had moved away a bit at Mr. Alfred's reprimand, now approached again, but this time not with hostility, with curiosity, envy, hope. "Is that possible?" the woman with the chest wound asked, her voice now less aggressive, more vulnerable. "To go back," Alfred answered honestly. "I don't know, Mr. The ambulance arrived at the hospital. Jake skidded to a stop in front of the emergency room. Doctors and nurses were already waiting. Someone had radioed. Let's go," a doctor shouted, running towards the ambulance. The rear doors opened, bright lights flooded inside, and all the spirits, except Mr. Alfred, vanished instantly, like smoke dissipated by the wind. But Mr. Alfred remained. He floated beside his own stretcher as Emily and 2 orderlies pulled her out. "I will stay with you," the spirit said, "until the end. Whatever that end may be." Jake and Emily exchanged glances, wordless, but understanding each other perfectly. That night was far from over. The Northwestern Memorial Emergency Room was a whirlwind of activity, even at that time of night. Doctors, nurses, patients, and caregivers, all moving with urgency and exhaustion. Jake and Emily pushed Mr. Alfred's stretcher in, following protocol even though they knew it was already too late. The spirit floated nearby, watching with a fascinated expression. "It's weird," he commented, though only Jake and Emily heard him, seeing all this from a dead person's perspective, seeing how people struggle, worry, try to save lives, when in the end, we all go to the same place. "I still don't understand why you're here," Jake said quietly as they walked through the halls. "Why didn't you go?" "I think I have unfinished business," Mr. Alfred replied. "Or perhaps it's not my time to go yet." They continued walking, arriving at the trauma room. Dr. Michael Chen, one of the hospital's most experienced doctors, met them in the hallway. "What do we have?" "Alfred Morrison, 73 years old," Emily reported professionally, though her voice still trembled slightly. "Hit and run on Michigan Avenue, head trauma, heavy bleeding, lost vitals en route." Dr. Chen quickly checked the body, shining a flashlight into the pupils, and looking for a pulse. "Time since cardiac arrest?" he asked. Jake looked at his watch. 15 minutes. The doctor sighed. It was too long, but he had seen miracles before. Take him to trauma room 2. Let's give it a try." They rushed over with the stretcher. Mr. Alfred remained floating nearby, observing all the commotion with surprising calm. In the trauma room, Dr. Chen and his team worked tirelessly. CPR, defibrillator, epinephrine, everything modern medicine could muster. Jake and Emily stood outside, through the glass window. They could see the doctors working on Mr. Alfred's body, and they could also see his spirit, standing in a corner of the room, watching. "Emily," Jake said softly. "About what?" he said. "In the ambulance." "Not now," she interrupted, shaking her head. "Please, not now, Jake. But I need to say it. I need to apologize for keeping everything from you. You're my partner. You deserve to know." Emily looked at him, and for the first time in hours gave a small smile. "I've hidden things from you too. About my sister. About how hard it is sometimes to do this job. Maybe," Jake said thoughtfully, "maybe the old man was right. Maybe we need to stop carrying everything ourselves." Before Emily could respond, the doctor stopped. Dr. Chen looked at the monitor. Straight line. He glanced at the clock on the wall. "Time of death, 12:42 a.m., he announced. "Someone call the family." The team began to disperse, turning off their equipment and covering their bodies with a white sheet. Outside, Jake and Emily watched in silence. And then they saw something impossible. Mr. Alfred's spirit, instead of approaching his body or disappearing, began to glow, more intensely than before. A warm, golden light that seemed to emanate from within him. "What's going on?" Emily whispered. The spirit looked at his own translucent hands, in which now glowed like small suns. I feel something," he said, his voice full of wonder. "Something calling me, but it's not my body. It's different. And then he understood. "It's the other side," he whispered. "It's the light everyone talks about. It's real. It's beautiful." Tears began to stream down the spirit's face. Tears of joy. "Thank you. Of peace," he said to Jake, and of Emily. "Understanding. Thank you for giving me these last moments, for letting me deliver this message to you. I think that's why I stayed. To help you, to prepare you for what comes next." "What's next?" Jake asked. "For us?" Mr. Alfred smiled. "Good things, if you allow them. Wonderful things. But first, as I said, you need to forgive yourself. You need to allow yourself to live." The light grew brighter, so bright that Jake and Emily had to look away. "Goodbye," Mr. Alfred's voice echoed, now distant. And thank you. And then he was gone. The light disappeared. The hallway returned to its normal fluorescent lighting. The noise of the hospital returned. Talking, footsteps, equipment beeping. Jake and Emily stood there in silence, trying to process everything that had happened. No one will believe this, Emily finally said. I know, Jake agreed. I can hardly believe it, and I was there. What do we do now? Jake took a deep breath. We finish our shift, we fill out the reports, and then we talk. Really, about everything. Emily nodded. It was a start. They turned to leave, to get back into the ambulance and get on with their lives. But then Dr. Chen ran out of the trauma room. Jake, Emily, come back here. They ran back, hearts racing. When they entered the room, they saw what had happened. The body of Mr. Alfred, who had been pronounced dead minutes ago, was moving. Not much, just little tremors, fingers twitching, chest rising and falling very, very slightly. And then, impossible, miraculous, terrifying. Mr. Alfred's eyes opened. The silence in the trauma room was absolute. Everyone, doctors, nurses, Jake, Emily, was paralyzed, watching the impossible unfold before their eyes. Mr. Alfred Morrison, dead 20 minutes ago, was opening his eyes. Dr. Chen was the first to react. Years of medical training took over. Monitors. Now, he ordered. Check vitals. A nurse rushed to reconnect the equipment. The familiar sound of beeping began to echo through the room. A heartbeat. Faint, irregular, but definitely present. BP 60 over 40 and rising, another nurse announced. Breathes 8 per minute, also increasing. This is impossible, Doctor, Chen muttered, but continued working, checking Mr. Alfred's pupils, testing reflexes. He was dead. No heartbeat for over 20 minutes. The brain can't. But even as he spoke, he knew he was witnessing something that science could not easily explain. Mr. Alfred tried to speak, his mouth moving weakly. Mr. Morrison, Emily approached, holding his hand. Can you hear me? The old man's eyes shifted, focusing on her. And then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled, a faint but genuine smile. You did it, he whispered, his voice hoarse. You saved me. No, Jake said, stepping closer as well. You were dead. We didn't do anything. I'm not talking about this life, Mr. Alfred replied, closing his eyes for a moment as if gathering strength. I'm talking about my soul. You heard me, gave me final purpose. That's Chen why. Looked from Jake to Emily. I could come back. What is he talking
Doctor?
about? It's a long story, Emily replied, without taking her eyes off Mr. Alfred. The old man opened his eyes again, this time looking directly at Dr. Chen. Doctor, I died. I know I died. I saw the other side. Mr. Morrison, you've suffered a severe trauma, Dr. Chen said gently. It's common to have hallucinations, confused memories. It wasn't a hallucination, Mr. Alfred insisted, with surprising strength in his voice. I saw it. I was there. It was beautiful, peaceful, but someone told me that it wasn't my time yet. There was something I needed to do here. And what would that be? Jake asked softly. Mr. Alfred smiled again, a mysterious smile. You'll find out. Soon. Before anyone could ask more, Mr. Alfred's body began to shake violently. The monitors went off in alarm. Chen insisted. He's having a seizure, diazepam. Doctor, urgently. The medical team sprang into action. Jake and Emily were wheeled out of the room. They watched through the window as the doctors worked frantically. Medications, equipment, procedures that saved lives every day. Jake, Emily whispered. What did he mean by, you'll find out? I don't know, Jake replied, but there was a growing uneasiness in his chest. But I have a feeling this night isn't over yet. He was right. After 10 minutes of intense work, Dr. Chen left the room, removing his gloves and wiping the sweat from his forehead. We've stabilized him, he announced. It's unbelievable. All the scans show normal brain activity. No signs of neurological damage, despite the time without oxygen. There's no medical explanation for this. A miracle, Emily said. Perhaps, Dr. Chenlat said. Or perhaps we still have much to learn about what the human body is capable of. Either way, I'm keeping him under close observation. You two should return to base and rest. It's been a long night. Jake and Emily agreed, but neither of them felt able to rest. As they walked back to the ambulance, Jake felt his phone vibrate. It was a text from an unknown number. "Dad, it's Emma. Grandma gave me your new number. I love you. I want to see you." Jake stopped in the middle of the hallway, tears instantly welling up in his eyes. "But what is it?" Emily asked. Jake showed her the message. How could she? "I never gave my new number to my ex-mother-in-law. How could she?" But he knew. Somehow, he knew. It was Mr. Alfred. It was part of whatever he was sent back to do. "Reply to the message," Emily said softly. "Text me now." With trembling hands, Jake typed, "I love you too, princess. Can we see you tomorrow?" The answer came almost immediately. "Yes. Grandma said you would call today. I don't know how she knew, but she said she had a dream about a nice man who gave her a message." Jake and Emily looked at each other. "This is crazy," Jake said. "I know," Emily agreed. "But it's crazy good, isn't it?" They continued walking, reaching the parking lot where the ambulance was parked. The Chicago night was beginning to give way to dawn, the sky turning purple and orange. Jake said, pausing before getting into the ambulance. "About that nurse. Daniel, right?" Emily blushed slightly. "Try. You should give him a chance. For yourself, your sister would want that." Emily was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe I will." They got into the ambulance. The interior felt different now. Cleaner, lighter, as if a heavy presence had been lifted. Emily looked into the back seat, to where Mr. Alfred, the spirit, had sat. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty air, "wherever you are." And then, just for a second, she saw it. A flash of golden light. The silhouette of an elderly man waving. A gentle smile. And then nothing. Jake drove the ambulance back to the station, both of them silent, but a comfortable silence. They had a lot to think about, a lot to process. But for the first time in years, they both felt something they had forgotten. Hope. The next few days were strange. Mr. Alfred Morrison miraculously recovered. Within a week, he was walking the hospital corridors, chatting with nurses, joking with doctors. None of the scans showed any permanent damage from the accident or the prolonged cardiac arrest. Doctors were baffled. Local newspapers began covering the story. The man who came back from death and headlined the Chicago Tribune. But Mr. Alfred didn't want to talk to the press. He just wanted to talk to Jake and Emily. They visited him in the hospital, bringing flowers and chocolates. "How are you two doing?" was the first thing he asked when they entered his room. "We should be the ones asking that," Jake laughed. "I'm fine," Mr. Alfred said, and he really did sound fine. Better than I've been in years, actually. "But did you do what you needed to do?" Jake looked at Emily, then back at Mr. Alfred. "I saw my daughter yesterday," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We spent the whole day together. It was perfect. And I have a coffee date with Daniel," Emily added, blushing. "Tomorrow." Mr. Alfred smiled broadly. "Great, that's wonderful. So it was worth it." "What was it worth?" Emily asked. "Dying. Not just dying," said Mr. Alfred explicit, "but this whole experience, you know. I was unhappy. Very unhappy. My wife had died 2 years ago. My children lived far away. I felt forgotten, abandoned. That night, I was walking down Michigan Avenue, wondering if it was worth going on." Jake and Emily sat in silence, listening. "I didn't throw myself in front of that car," Mr. Alfred quickly clarified. "I didn't try very hard to get out of the way either, you know. Part of me wanted it to be over. But then," he continued, "I died, and I realized something. Life is a gift, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, because it's our chance to make a difference, to touch other lives. And you two, you gave me that chance. Let me return not just to my body, but to my purpose." "And what is your purpose now?" Jake asked. "Really live this time. Call my kids, make new friends, maybe adopt a dog." He laughed. "And tell my story. So other people who are suffering know there is always hope. Emily wiped away a tear. Thank you, Mr. Morrison, for everything. Thank you both, he replied, for saving me. Twice. 3 months have passed. Jake was on the playground, pushing Emma on the swing. She laughed, asking him to go higher, higher, and higher. And he smiled, a genuine smile he'd forgotten how to give. He still took some sleeping pills. He still had difficult days. But now he was talking to a therapist. He was working on himself. And, most importantly, he was present in his daughter's life. "Daddy!" Emma yelled. "Are you coming to my birthday party?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he promised. And he would keep that promise. Emily sat in a cafe in Lincoln Park, laughing at a joke Daniel had just told. It was their 10th date. She still felt guilty sometimes, still had nightmares about her sister, but she was learning to balance pain with joy, memory with the present. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, taking her hand. "About how strange life is," Emily replied. "How sometimes the worst nights lead to the best days." "Deep," he teased, but there was understanding in his eyes. She smiled and squeezed his hand back. And Mr. Alfred? He was at a support group meeting for accident survivors, sharing his story. He didn't always mention the supernatural aspect. Most people wouldn't believe it anyway. But he talked about being given a second chance, about realizing the value of life when you lose it. And people listened, and they found hope. After the meeting, as he walked home, Mr. Alfred stopped. He looked up at the Chicago night sky, at the few stars visible through the light pollution, and for a moment, just a moment, he felt it again. The presence, the golden light, the peace. "Not yet," he whispered to the universe. "I still have work to do here." And the presence, if it was there, seemed to agree. It seemed to smile, because some souls are brought back for a reason. And Mr. Alfred still had so much love to give, so many lives to touch, so many hopes to kindle. Jake was driving the ambulance, Emily at his side. It was a quiet night. No calls yet. "Remember that night?" Emily asked suddenly. "Which night?" Jake joked. But they both knew exactly which night. "Sometimes I still wonder if it was real," she admitted. "If we really saw what we thought we saw." "It was real," Jake said with certainty. "It had to be, because it changed everything." "Yes," Emily exclaimed. The radio crackled. "Unit 23, we have a 1050 on the Kennedy Expressway. Multiple vehicles. Code 3. "Copy that," Jake replied. "En route." They turned on their sirens and sped off into the night. When they arrived at the scene, 3 cars were involved. Injuries ranged from minor to serious, but everyone was still alive. Everyone had a chance. Jake and Emily worked together with the efficiency of years of partnership, but now with something more, a deeper compassion, an understanding that every life they touch is precious, even when they can't save it, because they learned something that impossible night. Death is not the end, but life. Life is the present, and it is up to each of us to decide what to do with this gift. So, what do you think? Did Mr. Alfred really die and come back? Or was it all a collective hallucination, a delusion caused by stress and exhaustion? And the other spirits in the ambulance, were they real? Lost souls trapped between worlds? Or just manifestations of Jake and Emily's fears and guilt? Do we all have secrets that can only be revealed on the border between life and death? Things we need to hear, truths we need to face before it's too late? And when it's your time to go, what do you hope to find on the other side? Light, darkness, or just peace? Most importantly, if you had the chance to go back, as Mr. Alfred did, would you? And if you did, what would you change? Because in the end, perhaps the question is not, what happens after death, but rather, how do we live before it? Jake and Emily learned this in the most terrifying way possible, but also in the most life-changing way. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real reason some spirits come back, but to wake us up, to remind us that life is fragile, precious, and very, very short. Don't waste yours. And if you want more scary stories like this, don't forget to check out our full ebook in the pinned comments. There are real-life stories of emergencies that defy explanation, accounts from paramedics and doctors about the unexplainable, and much more exclusive content that will keep you up at night. Like, subscribe to the channel, And hit the bell so you don't miss any horror stories. And tell us in the comments, do you believe death is the end, or just the beginning of something more? Until the next story, if you have the courage to come back,